Welcome, welcome, fellow adventurers. Are you curious as to what happened in Deepfall Breach? If so, we're gonna take a look. Let's go! Greetings, you brave, brave souls. I am Sacred with Sacred Art of Gaming. Today we're going to talk about Alone in Deepfall Breach and my man, Sten Trafson, his adventure. We're going to go through the first section here. I think it's worth discussing him going through the reforged shard. Section 1, potential spoilers. If you think that this is something that you maybe just want to take piece by piece and not be spoiled for you, a lot of this is going to be very different for me than anybody else, I'm sure. Everyone's is, I think, going to be... It's going to be different, I promise you. Last chance for spoilers! Here we go, with the captive orc. Just to break things down for ya. First, let's go into the character a little bit. His name, Sten Trafson. He is a blacksmith of sorts. His father was an excellent blacksmith. He is better. And he's better because his father and the Lord were kind of close. Closer than what was normal for their roles, as well as their children, which kind of goes into how he's here to begin with. His children were a little too close. The Lord has a daughter who is eventually going to be promised to somebody else. Sten kind of needs to be taken out of the picture, which is why he gets sent away. Long story short, Sten's father dies. And this is in defense of his kingdom and in defense of the Lord's people. We don't really dive too much into the Lord, but we just know that his existence and how he played in the Sten story. Because his father died in defense of this, the Lord, in a manner of speaking, unofficially adopted Sten. Sten growing up with, essentially like a princess. They were kind of close. They're not related by any means, but there was some tension. And they grew up together. They were young. Just with people talking, nothing officially has happened. The Lord sees this and he's like, we gotta get this guy out of here. In that time, he has been given some of the best training as a blacksmith and some of the best resources. So with that said, he's even better. Sten gets sent away to Deepfall Breach. Deepfall Breach is this volatile area that I almost picture this being a little bit like in Game of Thrones where they send people to the wall. That's kind of what happened here. And this way, the Lord doesn't feel guilty about killing Sten, but he gets him out of the public eye, so this way he can set his daughter up to be married off for, political gain. He does, however, have a letter that he has not opened, but he does have a letter from his friend, the daughter. We jump right into the captive orc, and that's section 1. I'm just going to go through the flavor text here very briefly. The leader of a sect of demon cultists holds the Worldbreaker Shard, the tip of the abyssal spear that split this land and created the breach. The power cannot stay in their grasp. Foul magics cloud their location from my sight. So ye must locate the shard through other means. Seek below a band of cultists transporting a prisoner, an orc named Gorham. Gorham knows the location of the cultist outpost and may serve as a valuable ally in the days to come. This is brought to you from Engulfer Stonegaze, who's a wolfkin that you meet when you get there. He's got the sight and he's giving you hints, but he can't see everything. That's the narrative reason for why you are given what is to come, which is pretty neat. He lets you know there's a trio of goblin scouts that's plundering the area. First, you jump into the plunging path. So a sloping corridor carries you into an oppressive depths of the breach. Tread softly, lest ye wake the creatures of fang and wing nesting within the cracks and hollows of this ancient passage. All right, so this is going to test Sten on every level. It's going to test his courage, his ingenuity, everything. And on top of that, he also showed up with his best friend's tools. His best friend being a carpenter apprentice, essentially. So he shows up with the wrong stuff, which explains why he is... he has to make do with the axe. It would make more sense that he had a hammer as a blacksmith, but given Sten being like a random rolled up character as an artisan, but has the axe and has some skill with an axe, we did kind of go into the tragic beginnings for Sten And then now we have the captive orc, right? So he's gotta retrieve this shard for the abyssal spear. So he ventures into the breach alongside the enigmatic engulfer Stonegaze. He faces goblet ambushes, spectral apparitions, and deadly traps in his quest to find the elusive orc named Gorham. So in this first part, for me, whenever he went into this plunging path, this didn't actually take too much time. They kind of break it down. They allude to creatures of fang and wing nesting within the cracks and hollows of this ancient passage. How I ended up playing this was him essentially making some checks through stealth and then also through his athletics to make sure that if he's going to wake up these creatures, potentially bats, and then also is he gonna fall, anything like that. He actually ended up doing pretty well, so nothing crazy happened there. However, we go to the Charred Tomb, which was the second section. Fire long ago ravaged this once grand mausoleum. It holds 5 remaining sarcophagi amid piles of ash. Find ye a path through a door hidden within one of these coffins, but disturb not the scorched dead nor the hidden trap. So here is Sten. He confronts undead horrors, as one does. Oh, and spectral guardians, of course. In his search for the reforged shard, battling flames, traps, and supernatural foes, Sten's resourcefulness and determination are put to the test as he fights for survival. For this piece here, essentially this almost led to almost like a puzzle, Indiana Jones trap type situation, and this is based on skill rolls, but also the tables that I rolled on ended up bringing us there. He was successful in dodging multiple traps, but of course, whenever he goes to open one of the sarcophagi, failed a stealth check, makes a crazy screech noise. I believe he rolled a demon. Demon being bad, dragon being good. Roll a demon, crazy screech noise. In comes the undead, so now he's a solo character having to fight off multiple undead. Was not easy, it was pretty rough, but he did persevere. He was able to take some time to heal, but based on the rolls that happen and the threat that we have here, the threat moves as time passes, and you could make time pass differently depending on how you play the game, but this is where the threat hit for me. So then he's ambushed by goblins as he's trying to rest and heal up. He was actually pretty lucky in this, though. He turned this around pretty quickly, decimating 2 of them, right from the jump. He did have a back and forth with the last one. He was able to, after throwing an axe, missing, he grabs a short sword from one of the dead ones and cuts the last one down. Much better with axes than swords, but he just got lucky and had to work with what he had. Next, we go into so 3 and 4 are unknown. So this was based off of random rolls. And next he goes into this cramped chamber with a deep well, slimy surfaces, and a ghostly apparition. Arcane trickery is afoot. So lots of rolls took place there. And honestly, I feel like the unknowns is where things get real crazy. And it's always fun to pull that back in. There was a ghostly apparition, and it ended up having an open reaction to him. He approaches, and based on the rolls that I have, which was craft, transform, and trap, this is what ended up unfolding. There was an entangling snare trap, which was not working effectively against orcs getting into this chamber. There was a lot of orcs throughout the Deepfall breach. Chamber's meant to be the ghost resting place. Her name is Karina, and the orcs that come through here disrupt her peace. She notices that I appear to be a craftsman of sorts, and she would like me to fix the trap her husband initially created, or create a brand new one that's more effective. There's no raw materials here for him to work with, and Sten didn't notice anything strange about the whole interaction other than speaking to the dead. He convinces Karina to allow him to return with proper materials because there is not enough present for him to complete her quest. So that was through a persuasion roll. So he did not complete that there. But then, as chance would have it, I see you giving me eyes. I promise you this was through random events. It literally is the next section, unknown. Idle workshop with a decrepit shrine with skittering sounds, a sentient door, and ominous war drums. That is so much. There's so much to unpack there. So very conveniently, Sten finds materials he can use in the next area. He immediately looks over the materials and begins to gather them when he looks at the door on the far side of the room as it speaks. So this honestly, this part right here spiraled my whole solo session into like something that is pretty unique, I think. So when he hears the door explains to him that he has not earned those materials, which is fair. Therefore, they don't belong to him. Sten asks how he must earn them. The door tells him that he is unlikely to earn them. Again, these are roles happening in the background. Sten attempts to persuade the door otherwise and fails. Sten asks if he is able to open him. What a strange thing to ask. I mean, maybe not a door, but a strange thing to ask anything in my experience. The door seems hesitant. He explains that he holds back many dangers and he is no longer meant to be opened. Sten also fails to persuade the door to allow him to enter and take care of this problem for him. So multiple failures in multiple types of persuasions. Sten then says, okay, well, how will you stop me from using this workshop? The door opens. Several formidable skeleton champions enter the room, and at this point, Sten is solo. He does have a little bit of a boost with the solo rules, having some additional talents, but it was tough. It was tough. So Sten attacks the first one. It's heavily armored. It skillfully attacks him back with a longsword, dropping him in one fell swoop. Turns his back as the other one just grabs him by the collar and drags him through the door. Sten eventually opens his eyes to a chaotic world with purple lightning in the sky and floating mountains and islands peppered throughout this broken world. They drop him at the feet of a chaos orc shaman named, I rolled this name somewhere and I still struggle to pronounce it. Kulga. Khulga. How do you say that? You tell me. Put it down in the comments down below. So this chaotic orc shaman is now asking for the same orc that he is there to get. Gorham, of course, because that makes sense. He's a traitor to his people and needs to pay the price for his transgressions. He's unable to leave this plane, but he wants him to send him back. So this is where things get a little crazy, as if it's not crazy enough. So Sten is trying to deceive this orc shaman. He sees right through it. So Kulga grabs Sten's arm like this, kind of like, I feel like Arnold Schwarzenegger shakes hands with people, like Predator probably, or no, that was more like this. But yeah, maybe in more like Roman, Greek movies and stuff, kind of one of these handshakes. And doing that, it leaves a runic tattoo burned into the flesh of Sten. Within this tattoo is a timer. So he has 10 days to return Gorham to Kulga, before the time runs out. If not, chaos will take him, which is kind of assumed that these creatures that brought him there, chaos took them as well. So it's not a good fate. Kulga, he actually does some healing on Sten and sends him on his day, but he lets him know the door's not going to let him leave easily. He heals, and when he heals him with dark magic, which kind of gives him a little bit of a bonus to fighting his way out. See how the things that are actually spelled out took far less time than the random stuff? So upon approaching, the ground immediately begins to rumble as the door summons a champion made of magic stone, a powerful elemental. This does not exist in the book, but I ended up using the White's stats. So feel free to do that in this game or any game, right? Take something and just reflavor it. And what ends up happening here, Kulga actually does help him because this is a significant threat. They can hear the door echoing around them. You must not leave this place. You've been tainted by the corruption of chaos. But powerful being begins to attack, flinging Sten. Just angered by this, Sten gets up. He unleashes a hellish leaping attack with his now, so Kulga imbued his hand axe with chaotic energy. So this already does not bode well with this chaotic energy, which we've already kind of identified as not great. So this elemental has this huge morning star and actually goes to attack Sten. Sten's able to parry it, luckily, but it did leave him off balance. The impact smashes him so hard, his body is no longer recognizable. Because I just started, I didn't want the adventure to end here. So Sten finds himself in a peaceful place, lying in a couple inches of perfectly still water. He hears the voice of Ingolfer Stonegaze, the demon-hunting wolfkin that sent him on his journey. He tells Sten that he has experienced little to no luck on his journey, and this will be his final chance to reach the orc. Any other bargains are his issue and his issue alone, but you are clearly not prepared for what was laid before you. Rise with knowledge that you have experienced this far. So I felt like my character, especially because he was an artisan, was a little underwhelming. This kind of gave him like a free level up because it wasn't going to happen. I did end up enjoying him as an artisan, and I was kind of tied to the character. I didn't want to restart. So we went forward with it, but gave him like a free little boost. I saw that somewhere in the rules. Maybe I read the way I wanted to, but we continue. Nobody leaves here freely after reaving such gifts, says a strange new voice. Suddenly calm water begins to rumble and it forms a maze around him. There's a serpent-like creature now in this, he's like in Inception, multiple layers into the dream world. Through the door, now dead, fighting his way out through this water serpent maze. He picks a direction, he runs as the walls are crashing around him. I did kind of homebrew some rules around this. It kind of ended up being like challenge roles in a sense to make his way through. And he did succeed. He analyzed the patterns, looking for gaps as the serpent is moving around him. He even took a couple swings at this water serpent. The creature seems to double back on itself as Sten is out of position after his little action roll that he does, able to land a well-placed strike with an axe right over one of its eyes, giving him the chance to make a break for the exit before the entire maze just collapses on itself. The impact thrusts him back to where he was with incredible force. Sten now comes to, seeing the shaman, his unlikely ally, still battling the elemental, which is fairly strong. I made some changes based on the battle that was happening while Sten was away, and made some changes to its ferocity and made some changes to its stats. And narratively, why that happened is because Kulga has been battling it. So Sten's waterlogged leather armor did slow him down in this fight, but he is able to parry a huge sweeping attack, attempting to hit both him and the shaman, but he's able to lash out. He does eventually find a hidden weak point. So one of the things that he's good at is spot hidden, and he finds it underneath his chin. Takes his axe, jams it in there, which allows him to ignore the armor, doing a ton of damage, and hit him right on the button, and he disassembles the entire elemental at this point, just crumbles. He has enough time to gather a little bit of special material from the elemental, and he heads out the door. The shaman even pushes him through as the door is still trying to speak to him and let him know not to do it. The door does not seem pleased and asks, "What have you done? Tell me." Sten ignores the door and immediately begins working on some additional armor based on the pieces that he got from the elemental. Gave him a nice little buff in the armor department. But the chaos energy that was once on his axe is now gone, that he's out of that realm. Really off the rails. And after all that, another goblin ambush. He actually deals with them pretty quickly. And then he even shoots one of them with the bow and arrow. He does return to the ghost. He installs the new trap, and naturally, he asks why. Because Karina didn't seem to be as pleased as he expected. We do have another role here, Scavenge Dangerous Person. She's unsettled by my armor and wants to know how he's obtained it. Sten tells the truth. And she immediately gets upset and attacks. Sten attempts to attack her first, nothing happens. He managed to realize that this is not normal ghost behavior. This is an illusion, to kind of double back to the role that happened earlier. Sten finds that a goblin mage with 3 scouts protecting it. The goblin mage seems willing to talk. Sten asks about the orc, and the goblin tells Sten where to find the orc. And this is basically, this mage was doing this illusion. We're alluding to some type of beef between goblins and orcs in this area. Sten shows her his mark, and she looks a little scared, and she is not willing to try and remove it. So Sten tries to get a little help after just getting it. Sten asks why. She wants to trick him into setting up that trap, and she just says orcs, and then points in the direction she wants him to go. All right, and then that brings us to the final part, part 5, the Fiendish Altar, where in this first part, we're getting to the final showdown. And here, the cultists take refuge here with their prisoner. My sight cannot glean their aims, the sight being Engulfer Stone Gaze. But the bloodstained altar at the center of this chamber has seen countless deaths at the hands of those seeking parley with demonic forces. But I sense fear, hesitation in these cultists. They'll not die needlessly for their cause. I suspect free Gorham from their clutches. So as he goes there ends up being, we did some additional rolling just to help me picture like what's happening here. And we got an abandoned outpost, corroded surfaces, a humming obelisk, and imminent collapse. So there were numerous cultists, and Sten is actually able to sneak through the outpost, which is great, especially even with this additional armor that he now has. And he's able to sneak right to the cage where Gorham is, and he speaks to him. He lets him know that he's there to free him. Escape, protected death is what I roll. Gorham lets Sten know that we must escape because they have discovered that he is protected from death. Interesting. And they are going to leverage that for a powerful ritual. Sten asks him about the shard, but Gorham tells him they must escape first, and then he'll tell him everything he needs to know. Feels like a pretty obvious bargain to me. Sten asks Gorham about the magical cage that he's being held in, but it's far beyond his understanding. Luckily, there appears to be a cultist that he can single out because Sten is unable to decipher anything about this magical cage he's being held in. This doesn't tell me he's in a magical cage, but that's just where we landed, between rolls and me just kind of painting the scene. Despite his much heavier armor, he's able to carefully get one cultist alone and question him about the cage. He attempts to intimidate her into opening the cage, but the cultist resists and doesn't appear to be worried about death. Makes sense, cultist. Sten carefully goes through her robes and finds, in addition to her normal clothing, Sten carefully goes through her robes and finds a scroll with a thorough breakdown on how the magical cage works. How convenient. He knocks her out and opens the cage for Gorham, but he does it in a way that draws a lot of attention. They immediately run to a more advantageous position, and Sten smashes the first of 4 corroded areas that appear to be holding up this chamber. This is great because this turns this potential combat situation that could be a slog. There was quite a bit of combat here. Probably more than there should have been in this first section. That's just me kind of getting my bearings. But this kind of turned it into like a challenge scene. This turns this potential fight into like a chase. With Gorham now covering Sten, he's able to quickly hit the corrosive areas in the chamber, having it collapse behind them as they're running out. Because this is just too many cultists for them to deal with. Unable to avoid all of the debris falling in the collapse, Sten's taking damage, Gorham's taking damage. It's rough. But they did survive, and they did escape. They take the short journey to Outskirt, which is a small nearby town. Gives me like Torchlight vibes to the town there. And then they can resupply. Then we kind of go through the gold for them selling their stuff, everything that they got. And then after completing all that, Sten went through a nice little level up. And there you have it. That is the first section in the thrilling saga of Sten Travson. Do you want to see everything? You want to see all 5 sections for Alone in Deepfall Breach? Let me know in the comments down below. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, do all the crazy YouTube things. Yeah, I had fun doing this, and I think I'm going to have fun explaining it to you and kind of breaking it down. Let me know if you're more curious on the mechanical side of things or the narrative side of things. If you want to know more of the behind the scenes and the tables and stuff and the roles. But what I can say is that the humble Sten Travson, son of a blacksmith, the tools of a carpenter, the potential love interests of something that is stepsister adjacent, being sent to this desolate land to deal with these problems that are not immediately the problems of his lord's land. I enjoyed the journey. Hopefully you enjoyed that journey too. My name is Sacred with Sacred Hour of Gaming, signing